Thank you all for attending. I am calling this meeting of the Public Services Committee Tuesday, October 9th, 2012 to order. First item on the agenda will be review and approval of minutes dated September 11th, 2012.
Move approval, Aguilar.
Second, Karski.
Okay, with that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that passes 4-0.
Councilor Anderson.
Councilman Karski.
In the interest of cost to the city, because we have some subcontractors involved tonight, I would like to move agenda item 4 above agenda item 3, if that's okay.
I'd second that motion.
Okay, with a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that passes. So item 4 will be the first item on our agenda, and that is the subdivision construction. And our update will start with Chad Huey, our city engineer.
Good afternoon, Chad Hebe with the Engineering Division of Public Works. My discussion today will focus on the construction of subdivisions in the City of Sioux Falls. You should have in front of you a packet of information that's also available over here. It includes the presentation today and then a copy of the Subdivision Construction Agreement and then our letter of support from the Home Builders Association. My goal today is threefold. We're going to talk about the current subdivision construction process. We're going to talk about the status of the subdivisions we have today, and then I'll introduce the proposed subdivision construction process. The first thing we need to do is talk about who builds new streets in the City of Sioux Falls. Our arterial streets, like our project this year on Louise Avenue from 85th to 95th, is constructed publicly by the city through the capital program. 90th Street, which runs east and west of Louise Avenue, is a collector street and was constructed privately and then dedicated to the City of Sioux Falls. The risk to the city and its taxpayers is when a developer wants to develop land, agrees to construct the improvements, and does not fulfill his commitment. In the end, the improvements need to be completed. When I talk about the public improvements tonight, we're going to be talking about the underground utilities, the curb and gutter, the street surfacing, the street lights, and any other products or activities required to construct the street. These are the steps that the city follows to develop land and are discussed in detail in the subdivision ordinance. We're not going to talk about them today, but we are going to focus on the plat and the assurance agreement. And the potential risk to the city and its taxpayers is realized when that right-of-way is dedicated during the plat process. Now some technical terms we'll run through quickly. A plat is a map of a piece of land subdivided into lots, parcels, tracts, or blocks, including streets, right-of-way, easements, and all irrevocable offers of dedication. It is required when land is divided for purposes of sale, transfer of ownership, or in creating a building site prior to the issuance of a building permit. This is language from our subdivision ordinance that requires assurances for public improvements. And to summarize this, no plat of a subdivision will be approved unless the required public improvements have been constructed prior to plat approval, or the developer has signed an assurance agreement committing to construct the public improvements within a specific time period. The city has required an assurance since 1980 during the plat process. First, it was just a letter of assurance, and then in 1993, it was converted into an assurance agreement. The agreement is signed by the developer and the mayor, and the developer is required to file the agreement with the county register of deeds. Once it is executed, the developer has agreed to construct all of the public improvements. For the majority of subdivisions, and until recently, this agreement has served the city and its taxpayers well. However, with the economic downturn that occurred a few years back, the weakness in this agreement was exposed, and that is there's no financial security that'll fund the improvements if the developer is unable to. All right, now I'm going to give you a little bit of history on what we've done. In the fall of 2009, we conducted a thorough review of all of the subdivisions to determine if they were in compliance with their assurance agreement. In the spring of 10, we started a dialogue with these out-of-compliance developers, notifying them of their status, requesting an updated schedule of when the improvements would be completed. And the most common response was, "We'll get it done when we start selling lots again." Well, because we knew what the issue was, we formed a subcommittee of the Infrastructure Review Advisory Board. And the topic was just not subdivisions that are out of compliance, and it wasn't just financial securities. It was all about the entire construction process: timeframes, warranty periods, inspections, testing, and many more items. Our goal was to have the construction process for subdivisions to be very similar to the construction process we have for public improvements. The subcommittee met several times and discussed many topics. In May and October of 2011, we did send letters to the out-of-compliance developers, again requesting updated information as to when their commitments would be fulfilled. And the same response was that we will complete them once we start selling lots again. In February of 2012, we filed a notice of claim of interest on 1,050 vacant lots in the out-of-compliance subdivisions. The purpose was to forewarn potential lot purchasers of the uncompleted improvements, and that the potential existed that they could be assessed for the costs of those improvements. What it comes down to is when somebody purchases a lot, they assume that the street in front of their lot is done and complete. And so we do receive 1 or 2 phone calls a week asking, what does the notice mean? And we explain to them what it means and that there's a potential for street assessments in the future. Okay, July of this summer, we sent letters out by certified mail to the out-of-compliance subdivisions. In the letter, we requested a meeting and notify them that the subdivisions had to be in compliance by September 30th of 2012. During the meetings, we also communicated with them as to what they could do to bring their subdivision in compliance. One option was to complete the improvements. Another option was to provide a financial security that would take care of the improvements. The third was to agree to a suspension of building permits on those lots where the improvements were not done yet, or provide other assurances to us that the work would be completed. So in July, when those initial letters were sent, there were 30 subdivisions out of compliance, which equates to 21 miles of streets, and the estimate to complete the improvements was $10.2 million. Today, there are only 12 subdivisions out of compliance, which equates to 10.4 miles of streets with an estimated value to complete of $4.8 million. So I'd say great strides were made this year. Okay, the next 3 slides list the out-of-compliance subdivisions and the entity that signed assurance agreements for that subdivision. The subdivisions out of compliance are Arbor's Edge Edition, the Canterbury Heights Edition, Cherry Creek Heights 2nd Edition, the Elrod Edition, the Green Hills Edition, the Hayward Meadows Edition, the Legacy Ridge Edition, the North Ridge Edition, the Redstone Village Edition, the Southern Vistas Edition, the Westwood Valley Edition, and the Wild Meadows Edition. I will note the Green Hills Edition, the North Ridge Edition, and the Wild Meadows subdivisions no longer have a developer associated with them. Because of the uncompleted improvements and the risk to the city and its taxpayers, we have started the legal proceedings against the entity that signed the assurance agreement. And here's a map that just gives you an idea of where these subdivisions are in relation to the city limits. All right, back to the IRAB subcommittee. In April, we began meeting again with one goal, and that was to develop a mechanism to protect the city and its taxpayers in future subdivisions. The subcommittee included representatives from the development community, home builders, consulting engineers, contractors, city staff, and then representatives from title companies, surety companies, and financial institutions. Several meetings were held between April and July, and I have to thank everyone involved for the countless hours and their participation in putting this agreement together. Now on to the agreement. The agreement, or the product of this subcommittee, is what we're calling the Subdivision Construction Agreement. This document will replace the current assurance agreement, and the process of constructing subdivisions and the process of constructing public improvements will be very similar. The majority of the requirements in the new agreement are requirements that we currently have and are not new. The agreement is a combination of language, The agreement is a combination of language from our current assurance agreement and from the city's general conditions for public improvements, which is the document that outlines the processes we follow when we construct public improvements through the capital program. The new piece of this is that the agreement requires a performance security to ensure all public improvements are completed and a warranty security to warrant those improvements. Here's the state law that allows financial securities for the construction of subdivisions. I won't take you through that, but it's there. The requirements of these securities in subdivisions are very common across the region and are required in Rapid City, Sioux City, West Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, and Lincoln. Under the new agreement, the developers will have 4 options for constructing their subdivisions. Option 1 is to construct all of the improvements, let the warranty period expire, and then plat. Under this option, the developer does not have to provide a performance security, does not have to provide a warranty security. However, the time period for when construction begins to when platting could occur could range from 2 to 3 years depending on their pace of construction. The second option is to complete all of the improvements and then plat. So under this option, the developer would not provide a performance security, but would provide a warranty security, and then they could proceed with platting. Option 3 is to begin construction, and then sometime during that construction period is when they would plat. Under this option, the developer at platting would provide a performance security for the public improvements not yet complete, and then a warranty period and a warranty security. So for example, a developer wants to build or construct an 8-lot cul-de-sac, and the public improvements are estimated to cost $100,000. Under this scenario, the developers went in, completed all the improvements except the top lift of asphalt. They put in all the utilities, the curb and gutter, the bottom lift of asphalt. Now they want to plat and start selling those lots. And let's just say the top lift of asphalt costs $15,000 to complete. So at the platting, when they come into plat, they would provide the city a performance security for the $15,000 for the top lift of asphalt and then proceed with platting. Option 4 is where they would plat right away before any construction begins. Under this option, the developer would provide a performance security for all of the improvements, followed by a warranty security. So under the same example, this $100,000 cul-de-sac, the developer would provide the city a performance security for $100,000 and then proceed with platting. Now I'll take you through each section of the subdivision agreement very briefly. This agreement will apply to all public improvements for subdivisions. The declarations include that the developer wishes to develop land in the City of Sioux Falls and that the city wishes to prevent the use of public funds to complete the private development. In addition, the agreement must be executed before the plat is approved or a construction permit is issued, and then the developer will indicate if they are going to begin construction before platting or plat and then begin construction. Section 1 is the definitions used in this agreement. Section 2 requires that all improvements are completed within 2 years of the date of the agreement and that the time period can be extended by 1 year. Section 3 requires that a construction permit is obtained prior to construction. Section 4 discusses the performance security. The city will not approve any final plat until all of the improvements are complete or the developer executes a performance security in favor of the city. The security will be in the amount of 100% of the engineer's estimate to construct the improvements not yet installed at the time of platting. The security will never be less than 10% of the engineer's estimate to complete the improvements. Street lighting that will be or has been furnished by the city will be furnished and installed by the city and has not been paid for will be included in the engineer's estimate. The performance security shall be secured in favor of the city by 3 methods: an escrow account, a bond, or an irrevocable letter of credit. Section 5 allows and discusses performance security reductions. Section 6 discusses the acceptance of the improvements and the warranties. The utility acceptance will include the water, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, and sump pump collection systems and will be warranted for 2 years. Final acceptance will include all of the other improvements, including but not limited to grading, base, curb and gutter, and surfacing, and will be warranted for 1 year. The warranty time periods are the same as they are today. The developer can request a time extension due to an extreme hardship, and if it is determined the hardship exists, a time extension may be granted up to 5 years. Section 7 discusses the warranty security. Again, the city will not approve any final plat until all the public improvements are complete and found free of defects for the warranty periods, or the developer executes a warranty security in favor of the city. The security will be in the amount of 10% of the engineer's estimate to construct all of the improvements. Street lighting costs will be included in the estimate. The security shall be secured in favor of the City of Sioux Falls by an escrow account, a bond, or an irrevocable letter of credit. Section 8 talks about the warranty inspection process. Section 9 discusses the requirements of the engineer's estimate. Section 10 provides more details on street lighting. Sections 11 through 21 were taken from the city's general conditions for public improvements. Section 11 outlines the authority of the city engineer. Section 12 discusses the coordination of documents. Section 13 discusses the cooperation by developers. Section 14 outlines the duty of the city's inspector. Section 15 discusses the inspection of work. Section 16 discusses the materials to be used in construction and the testing procedures we will use to verify the materials conform to the plans and specifications. Section 17 requires the work performed and the materials furnished to conform to the plans and specifications. Section 18 requires non-conforming work to be removed and replaced. Section 19 discusses acceptance limitations. Section 20 outlines the process for revising the approved construction plans. Section 21 discusses the requirements of the developer and or the construction workers and their methods and equipment used. Section 22 discusses the protection of concrete during paving operations and snow removal. Section 23 discusses the developer's responsibilities for maintaining and securing the property being developed until the bottom lift of asphalt is placed. Section 24 discusses roadway maintenance responsibilities. Section 25 discusses the transfer of responsibility from the obligations of this agreement. Section 26 outlines the process that will occur if the developer fails or neglects to fulfill the obligations outlined in this agreement. And Section 27 includes a non-inclusive list of items that will constitute a breach of this agreement, the process of how the city will notify the developer of the breach, and then the process of how the developer will cure the breach of this agreement. Similar to the current assurance agreement, the new subdivision construction agreement will be signed by the developer and the mayor. This new agreement, similar to the existing agreement, will be in the subdivision ordinance. The agreement has been approved by the Infrastructure Review Advisory Board. The Home Builders Association of the Sioux Empire supports the adoption of this agreement. The agreement will prevent the use of public funds to complete private development. The schedule moving forward is to bring the revised subdivision ordinance to the Planning Commission and the City Council in December. Since it is the subdivision ordinance, it has to go to the Planning Commission also. So in closing, I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank Kurt Peppel right there. He's a civil engineer on my team, and he's spent countless hours working on this. It's just been fantastic. He's done a wonderful job. And I will say that there are several staff here behind me to answer any questions that we can for you today. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chad. Do we have any questions from committee members? Mr. Karski.
I remember when this first came before us in a meeting, and I applaud the use of securities. One question that comes to mind, we already require securities to be for electricians and contractors and that type of thing, so we're really not stepping out of the box. But you gave 4 options for the construction time. Are we going to allow all 4 of them, or are we going to try to narrow it down?
Well, I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide several options so that developers can make the best business decision they can.
So you're saying they could use any one of these 4? We're
Yeah,
going to give them all
they could,
4 of the options.
Absolutely.
Okay. And yeah.
Now I have some opinions on, I think, which ones they will use, but and I'll just share this with the group. In our countless meetings with both the home builders and the Infrastructure Review and Advisory Board, they wanted options. Maybe one of the options won't work today for whatever reason, but 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road, maybe it does work. And so they wanted to have some flexibility in here, and this is what we agreed on.
Okay. If I could just...
Please.
These don't come at no cost, obviously, and I'm impressed and happy to see the Home Builders Association behind this and supporting it. And from looking at the document, it was a lot of work, and I thank you for that. But just curious on the pushback from developers, because this does increase their cost. Did they give any idea what it might cost, for a typical residential lot, requiring this type of thing?
I could get you that information. What I've been told is that a bond will typically cost between maybe 1% and 4%. So if they were going to securitize the $100,000 cul-de-sac, the bond would cost them between $1,000 and $4,000. Now, a lot of that's going to depend on, of course, the developer's credit, the size of the project. To get some of the subdivisions in compliance, we have received financial securities, and we've seen an array of costs that would probably fit into that 1% to 4% range. So I haven't sat down and figured it out what it would cost per lot, but we could probably do that.
Just in the interest of keeping home ownership affordable, I guess. So just it's a question that I'd like to have answered. So thank you.
Any other? Councilwoman Erfenbach?
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. I should never ask questions about contracts because it shows how little I really know about this. But my question is, and I think Councilor Karski was leading up to it, is I'm looking at your presentation. There are 4 options. If I'm going to build a subdivision, I have 4 options. But on the actual agreement, there's only 2 places to check. Can you explain that in 4th grade language for me, please?
I can. Right here. This is why I put this in here. Okay. If they would check the top box, which means they're going to proceed with construction before platting, then any of the first 3 options I talked about,
okay,
that would apply to this one, because they could construct everything, or they could start construction and then plat, or they could start construction, finish the construction, and then provide us a warranty security. So if they check the top box, they could do option 1.
right, and then they will make their declarations as to, they'll say then they'll check box 1, but I'm doing you know.
Yep, I'm gonna click the top box, and I'm gonna start with construction. And if they want to start construction, we'll approve their plans, issue them a construction permit, and they can go.
Okay.
But what really triggers the risk and the financial security will be at the time of platting when the right-of-way is dedicated.
Right.
So if they click the first thing, they could plat at 3 different periods. If they want to plat first, that's when they would click the bottom
Okay. All right.
box.
Thank you. If I might, a couple more. Then, Chad, I have had specific conversations with homeowners in some of these developments, and so I came here with specific questions about that, but you answered them, I think, in terms of one of the developers that I had constituents talking about. The developer has disappeared, and we're going after them in court. So I appreciate that. My other part of that, then, is those developers that you said we've got financial securities from now. How will we proceed to make it right for those homeowners that are in those developments already? If we've got the financial security from that developer now that's out of compliance, are we going to do it? How's that going to work?
Well, we only have, that I'm aware of, I think 2 financial securities, maybe 3. And so I think we got to probably back up here a second. There are some subdivisions out there where we have a financial security, and typically those bonds they've provided us are good for a year. So we feel good about those. It's probably the other subdivisions I mentioned that don't have a developer associated with them. We don't have financial securities for those. We have to let the legal process play out, and then I think we'll have a better idea of what our next steps are and in fact who's going to complete the improvements.
So regardless of, you know, whether you have this financial security or not, for some of these homeowners that are in these developments already, it's just going to take some time at this point.
It is. I mean, they've been patient, and they've been extremely patient.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those, this is a horrible situation for some of those folks.
And that's when I get to the point is when you buy a lot, you know, the last thing you would ever think you have to pay for is a top lift of asphalt. And so that, I think, is the strength of this agreement, is that we are, as we go forward, we're going to, the homeowners are going to be protected. My tax dollars that I pay aren't going to go to finish a private development that I had nothing to do with. So
I really appreciate this, and I appreciate the home builders showing their support as well. I think Councilor Karski's right. It's going to be expensive, but from a homeowner aspect, this is huge. I really appreciate the work on this.
Thank you.
Any other questions from committee? Chad, I have a couple.
Certainly.
Of these out of compliance subdivisions, have any of them requested extensions or requested extreme hardship? Most of these were developed or in development before the housing fall. So how are we working with these 12 that are still out of compliance?
Well, when I started this process, we had one meeting and then we had another meeting, and I slowly began to realize that in every one of these subdivisions, there's no two alike. For whatever reasons, there's just many things that have went on or have happened. And so I can give you, there is some things going on in these 12. One of these, the street it's a public street today, but they want to vacate the street and make it into a private street. So by doing that, it would be in compliance. So that is something that's in the works, of vacating that street. Then they would be in compliance. There's another subdivision where somebody just bought a piece of it, and he has agreed. We have agreed that we will give him 2 years to construct. The utilities are in. We've given him now 2 years to construct the street part of it. And with that, we will sign an agreement with them that says if those improvements are not done within the 2 years, the city will stop the issuance of building permits. He has approved that. In some of the other subdivisions, if they come to us and say, I want to start phase 5 of my subdivision, my response will be, if you have money to begin phase 5, you can finish phase 3 and 4 before you start phase 5, and I don't have to issue that construction permit. So they haven't specifically asked for time extensions, but they've just said, this is what we can do. And I will say, it's not as if these 12 out of compliance haven't done anything. I mean, there's been a lot of work done in a lot of them that are still out of compliance. And, you know, they've told us we're going to finish it next year, but we don't have the assurance, I guess, today. That's why they've been listed as out of compliant. And I do think if we get to this time next year and there's no action, we have full authority to begin legal proceedings against them. But we're going to closely monitor them. I expect when I come back in front of the full council to talk about this, maybe the 12 is down to 10, maybe the 12 is up to 14. I don't know, but it's been a lot of difficult meetings with a lot of developers and a lot of time and a lot of communication, but I think we've made some great improvements.
And then, okay, just to continue on these out-of-compliance subdivisions, if an extension is requested, what's the process for just giving like a 1-year extension or the extreme condition extension? What's the process that these organizations, or what are you looking for?
Are you saying looking back at the existing subdivisions or looking forward at a new subdivision?
I'm talking about the 12 existing here. If they request an extension due to they may not have money to continue their development at this time, or, you know, the problems that they're having due to the housing problems that we've had, what is the process for the city looking at that development and saying, yes, we're going to give you a 1 year, or we're going to give you a longer extension so that you can get that development started again?
Well, the 12 subdivisions that are listed, we haven't granted them an extension. They are out of compliance. Now, if they would come in, just like the one I just mentioned, when we were talking about it, they said, we're going to commit to having this work done in 2 years. We looked at who it was, where they were buying, and made the decision that we're going to proceed with a 2-year extension, but we also have this caveat that if the work is not done, they've agreed that we can stop issuing building permits. So, you know, when they come in and make a request, I mean, we've worked closely enough with these people that I feel like I have a certain level of comfort, and if we think that a year's extension is granted, we're going to make that decision and extend it. Now, but it could be on the other case that there isn't an extension. And also, like the securities we have gotten so far are typically on an annual, they pay an annual premium on those. And so if you got a security, a performance bond for $25,000, after the first year they would reevaluate it, look at what you had done. If now you only have $5,000 worth of work left, the premium would reflect that.
Sure. Thank you. Once again, any other questions, or do we have any other statements?
Yes, can I just address one of the points on the cost, and also Chad's done a fantastic job marshaling this through. He's got help with in-house legal and Brett Leverin with out-of-house legal, as well as Shannon Bray. So there's been a number of people that have been involved. But one of the points on the cost is that there is a mechanism that they can really minimize their cost. likely we won't see like an Arbor's Edge where we've got over 160 to 180 lots that get developed in one phase. You know, I think we foresee that smaller phases get built, and ultimately they'll likely complete all the subdivision improvements. And if they do that prior to platting, then they don't have to provide the city a security bond. The only thing they have to provide is that warranty bond. So and we're going to see some subdividers that actually do that, smaller phases, and ultimately complete all the improvements before platting, just so that they can, again, take that 1 to 4% cost out of their equation. So with that, any additional questions, we're here.
Any other questions? Any motions that we want to make on this? Councilman Karski?
I don't think Brett Lovern's with Outhouse Legal, is he? I'm sorry. I would move to send this on to the full council.
Timing-wise, it goes to planning first. Do we need to take action? Do we need to take action? Let them do
I
their
don't
job?
think we actually do, because this will go to planning, and then planning will bring it to the council. And I don't see where we need to have this in an informational at this time either.
No.
If I may, I did talk to Mike Cooper today, and there's a potential that we could take this to the Planning Commission in November, if that would be your direction, and then I would bring it to the City Council probably for 2 meetings in December.
Mm-hmm. I would make that motion that we recommend it go to planning in that order.
Okay. Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, this will move to the Planning Commission then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next on our agenda, we have the parking ticket appeals, and we will have our city attorney, David Fifley, give us the opening on that.
Dave Fifley, in-house legal counsel. I'll make this very brief. As you're all aware, and I want to commend all of you with the work we did almost 2 years ago, recognizing that our administrative appeals process needed a lot of tweaking. And to the entire elected officials group, along with our office, we changed the administrative appeals process before a state Supreme Court decision even came about. And fortunately, just about everything we did that you folks had input on and approved passed legal muster, except for one thing. We had to make the ability to have an appeal to circuit court, and this past legislative session, I was able to work with the Municipal League to have that spearheaded through the legislature, and now anytime we have an administrative appeal through Chapter 2-60 to 2-66, we have the citizen ability to appeal an adverse decision to the circuit court. While this was going on, we've had this parking ticket appeals ordinance that's in front of you. In many ways, it mirrors what our former administrative appeals process did, but it actually provides a little more due process rights, but not sufficient. I am recommending, and certainly through discussions with you folks, that we take all the parking ticket appeals and place them under the same process for any other agency decisions through our administrative appeal process. It will provide citizens the due process that they deserve, and citizens will know that their appeals internally with the city are being heard by 2 fair and impartial hearing examiners. We hired through an RFP process 2 individuals last April. Dustin DeBoer, who is a private practice attorney. He used to be a deputy state's attorney here in Sioux Falls, and he's been doing these for a little over a year for us. And also, we had a former magistrate judge, the Honorable Michelle Chrisman, who's also the Dean of Criminal Justice and Paralegal Studies at Colorado Technical University. She's also our other hearing examiner. And from a logistics point of view, each of them are available for 1 day per month. I wanted to wait to request this change until we saw how that process worked to make sure, frankly, that we could handle the workload with these two different hearing examiners. I'm happy to say, after conversations with both of them, in terms of could we handle the workload, put parking tickets also with their appeal jurisdiction, they've both indicated, yes, they could handle those issues. And I think the process would work very well. Matt Nelson, who's the public parking manager, is also here to explain any further logistics. So, thank you.
Any questions from the committee?
I love how we're just crossing out everything. That's pretty cool. Nice touch.
I just want to commend the city attorney's office. This was something that when it was brought up, the city attorney's office jumped right on it, and due process is something that's very important in our country and our city, and following that due process here as a city is something that is a good thing for our citizens, and being able to take that appeal to a judge and feel that they have had their day in court is a great thing. So thank you for the work that you've done. Is there any motion that we need to make on this to take it to the city council?
Mm-hmm.
May I get a motion on this, please?
So moved, Aguilar.
Second, Erpenbach.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, then this next will move to city council agenda. Next, we have open discussion. Is there anything for open discussion? With that, then, I want to thank everyone for attending, and this meeting is adjourned.